Right, hey guys, it's Weston here. So today I'm going to be reviewing the Samsung T3 portable SSD. So just like to say a massive thank you to Samsung for sending this out to review. So let's take a look at it. And the first thing that really grabs your attention about this little device is just how compact it is. So looking at it next to my SanDisk wireless USB stick and my Xiaomi power bank, and you can just see how compact and small it is. So it measures in at 74mm wide by 58mm tall by 10.5mm thick, so it is extremely portable. So if you travel a lot and you don't want to take massive bulky drives with you, then this is really worth considering. It also is very lightweight as well, coming in at just 51 gram, and it's extremely well made. It's made from metal, and yeah, it feels really premium and really well put together. So this one here is the 250GB model, and it's finished in a really nice silver and black combo. On here we've got a bit of Samsung branding, and then your model number and all the information on the back. You've also got your USB Type-C port as well, and with this you get an included USB Type-A to Type-C cable. So this works with USB Type-C like I've mentioned already. It also works on USB 3.1, USB 3.0 and 2.0 as well. Speeds are actually very impressive, and I'm going to be testing this more later on in the video. So it says it gets a quoted up to 450 megabyte per second, which is read and write, and I think that is really impressive. So you can get a few different sizes of this as well. I've got the base model, which is 250GB. You can get a 500GB, a 1TB and a 2TB as well. Now it's got a pretty broad compatibility range as well, so it actually works with Windows 7 or higher, Mac OS 10.7 or higher, and Android version 4.4 or higher as well. So it works with a really broad range of products. But now let's get on to the real world testing and see how this actually performs when you're using it. Right guys, so here are the crystal disk mark speeds. So if you want to pause it now just to check them out, then this is what I did using that test. So now we're going to get on to some real world stuff, starting with video editing. And you can see now I've got loads of footage stored on the T3 drive, and I'm just dragging it onto my timeline. And you can see there's no problems whatsoever, and it pretty much works like an internal SSD would. So now we're going to scrub through the timeline, and again it works pretty much flawlessly, and it is really smooth. And you can see there's no delay or no buffering or stuttering or anything like that, and it really is that smooth. So making cuts and little edits to your video again is really buttery smooth, and just basically like you're editing from an internal drive. Now this is doing over USB 3.0 by my front port. Now if you're using say 2.0, then it might be a little bit more sluggish, but if you're using USB 3 or higher, then you're going to be getting some really smooth performance in terms of video editing. So now we're going to add some text to this, and you can see adding some text is actually really smooth, and I'm going to just move it around now just to show you that there's no sort of stuttering or anything. Now when I'm editing from my old internal big massive hard drive, my just regular hard drive, it's really slow, and sometimes you can see the text sort of jumping as it's stuttering, but on here it's really buttery smooth, and yeah, I've got no complaints for video editing. So say if you're at a hotel room and you want to get some editing done from a show you've been to or something, you can actually edit from this drive, and it works like you're editing from an internal drive. It's that smooth. Now like I said, that's USB 3, so if you're doing it off something like USB 2, then it might be a little bit slower, but it still should work. Right guys, so now we're going to do some rendering. So all the footage is on the T3, and I'm actually going to be rendering to the T3 as well. So if you've got a really slow internal hard drive and you want to obviously get faster rendering speeds, you might want to render to the actual drive itself. Now bear in mind this video is 10 minutes long, and it's quite complex. There's a lot of transitions, there's loads of color grading, there's loads of text, pictures, music. So it's got quite a lot to actually process and render, so just keep that in mind when you get to see the actual result. So what I'm going to do now is speed up the process, and then talk about how quick it actually did it at the end. And it's just about finished now. So it took 14 minutes and 9 seconds. And like I said, it was a very long file. It was rendered at 1080p. So yeah, I'm actually pretty impressed with how quick it did it. Now it's obviously might not be as quick as my internal SSD, and I'll show you that video in a minute, But yeah, 14 minutes and 9 seconds to render a 10-minute 45-second video is actually really impressive. Now we've got a similar rendering test with 3 different hard drives. So we've got the T3, a standard hard drive, and my SSD, what I usually use. You can pretty much see what I'm doing down in the bottom corner. So I'm rendering a video to my Kingston SSD, and all the files are on each individual hard drive, and then I'm rendering to that SSD, and I've timed them to see which one is actually quickest. So what I'm going to do is, because this took a while, I'm going to speed this next portion up, and then we're going to discuss the results when it's done. And you can see all of them have now finished. So the SanDisk finished first, which is the SSD. Surprisingly, the standard hard drive finished only 6 seconds later, and then the T3 finished 14 minutes 48, which was third. Now that is pretty close to the previous test of 14 minutes and 9 seconds where it was rendering to itself. So you can see there's not that much difference. Now it might seem like it takes a long time, but realistically it's a long complicated video that it's had to do, so I'm really quite impressed with how quickly it's managed to do this. So if you're doing this in this sort of scenario, then you can expect some really good performance. Not quite internal performance, but still very impressive. Right guys, so here is the final test, the 10 gig file transfer test. So what I've done is created a folder with 10 gigs worth of stuff. So we've got pictures, we've got music, we've got videos, we've got documents. So it's just basically like a folder that you'd have on your hard drive. What I'm going to do is transfer it to each of the 3 hard drives I tested previously, and we're going to see which one finished the quickest and which one got the best speeds. So this will just give you a rough idea of the real world speeds you can come to expect from the Samsung T3. So let's take a look at the speeds. So you can see right out the bat, the internal SSD is obviously the quickest, but that's not surprising. So we're going to focus on the Samsung T3. You can see it's quite inconsistent. We've got a big peak and then a dip and then a peak again, and it's sort of leveling out at around 180 meg, and now it's dropping quite drastically and averaging around 100 megabyte per second. The internal SSD has nearly finished, and the internal hard drive is really slow. The SanDisk pretty much finished already. So what I'm going to do now is speed up this next bit, and we're going to see the speeds and obviously how long this transfer did take. So you can see all the hard drives have finished now. So looking at the results, you can see we got a peak of 187 with a T3, an average of 140 meg, and a minimum of 82.9 megabyte per second. So yeah, I'm actually pretty impressed. It did beat out the standard hard drive. Now I did get a weird peak on that. I do seem to get that quite often. I'm not sure why, but it does happen, but I just kind of ignored that. And then the SanDisk peak was obviously more and the average was more, but you're still getting around 140 meg per second average using the T3, which is really impressive. And like I said, if you're transferring the exact same file, so if you're transferring all video, you probably get even higher speeds because it's not having to sort of crunch different file formats and different file types. So you'll probably see you'll get different results and probably better speeds as well. And then we did the same test but going the opposite direction. So this is the 10 gig from these to my Kingston SSD, and you can see we've got some really impressive speeds again. We're just going to ignore the other hard drives, but yeah, 159 meg average, 395 peak, and a minimum of 143 megabyte per second. So you can see you can transfer files really quickly, and like I said, this will probably be more or less depending on how much you're transferring and what you're actually transferring. Right guys, so that is pretty much it for this review. So what do I think of the Samsung T3 SSD? Well, for £94 UK or $99 US, which is a really good price by the way, it is a really impressive drive. You can see from the video we can edit off it no problem. Rendering, although slower than my internal hard drives, it was actually still really impressive. Rendering to different hard drives, again, it was slower but still really impressive. And if you're working from it, you're going to be having no problems whatsoever. Now, if you guys want to see a second test of this T3 using my laptop, then let me know by hitting that like button or leaving a comment down below. Right guys, so that is pretty much it for this review. Thank you so much for watching. If you've got any questions, drop a comment down below. Thanks again, and I will see you all on the very next one.